Hi, and welcome back to Purple Collar Life. In today's video, we are doing a long-term review of our Honda Foreman. This is the 450cc ES Honda Foreman. We'll walk through some of the controls, but mostly today we're talking about what it's been like to own this machine for 22 years. That's right, I bought this used, but only about a month old in the year 2002. It was August 12th, 2002. Now we are at the end of October 2024. So for the last 22 years, the Honda Foreman has been my four-wheeler here on the family land. Now this four-wheeler is the only four-wheeler I've ever owned. I've used it to plow the driveway. I've used it for trail rides. I've used it for overnight camping adventures in the woods, towing a trailer behind me with some firewood and some sleeping bags, maybe a tent. So I've used this thing for a lot of work and a lot of play, and as you can see, it's still in really nice shape. I take good care of my stuff. One of the things we're going to do today is change the oil, but before we start talking about the oil, let's start talking about this machine. So like I mentioned, I bought this Honda Foreman in 2002. My house was just about a year old at the time, and before I even had any porch, in fact, I think I was stepping on an upside down bucket, a 5-gallon bucket to get in and out of the front door. I definitely didn't have any of the rooms painted. There was a lot of work left to be done on the house, but you know, you make these kind of decisions when you're young, and I decided to spend $6,490 on this Honda Foreman 450 ES. Now, like I said, this wasn't brand new, but it was really close. The previous owners had it for 1 month. They were an older couple. They bought it thinking that it could kind of replace their lawn tractor for towing a cart around the yard. They discovered it was much more than what they thought it was. They said it went too fast, so they traded it back into the dealership on something else. I'm not sure what they ended up getting, but so this was sitting at the dealership with 1 month of ownership on it, could be sold as used at a little bit reduced price, and I was able to get it, like I said, for $6,490 back in 2002 with an extended warranty. This thing has been extremely reliable. In fact, I park this thing somewhere that I can always get it out easily. We live along a highway, so if there's an accident up at the roadway, or if something's going on that I want to go check out, this is the first thing I hop onto to get up to the roadway. Or if I need to run to my parents really quick, I hop on this thing through the woods, can get to their house pretty quickly. This is the kind of machine that is just like always ready to go. Because even if a tree came across our long driveway, this would allow me to get, you know, throughout our property, even if I couldn't get out to the roadway. So I've always liked having the Honda Foreman. I use it for a lot of work. The first few years of the house here, I used this towing a wagon or a trailer gathering firewood. This was my only tool to get firewood. I would put the chainsaw on the front rack. I would, you know, put my oils and gas on the back rack. I'd have my 10 cubic foot trailer that would haul firewood out of the woods and start stacking and storing firewood to heat my home in the wintertime. I also use this to plow the driveway. So part of the reason I was shopping for a four-wheeler was because I needed a piece of equipment to plow the quarter-mile driveway here in the wintertime. Back then, it seemed like we got a lot more snow, so I bought the state plow with an electric winch, and this is how I plowed the driveway for a long time. Yes, there are times that you're out in the freezing cold and you're getting the sleet accumulating all over you while you're plowing, but this thing does a really nice job plowing. It's never let me down plowing snow in the driveway. It's never let me down on trail rides. I've taken good care of it, and it's taken good care of me. I'm gonna get this oil change started while we talk. I have a 14mm wrench. The oil drain plug is underneath the machine. You can see my machine has a solid plate underneath with these two attachment points. That is for the snow plow. This is not the original skid plate on the bottom of this machine. This is aftermarket, came with the plow that I have on it. But that big hole in the middle, that allows you to get access to the drain plug. So that's what we're gonna do now. For some reason I had it in my head that was a 14mm. It was actually a 17mm drain plug. So we got that draining out. There's Olive standing in the background. I learned my lesson in my John Deere oil change video not to wear good clothes when changing oil, so I switched into an older sweatshirt here for the rest of the oil change. So one of the reasons this thing still looks and runs so good is because while I've used it for work, I've also taken good care of it. This thing has only left our property probably 5 times in its life. A couple times I took it with the snowplow on it to plow some other people's driveways to help out friends and family. And then one time I took it on a trail ride off our property and quickly found out that I don't have what it takes to be a full-time trail rider, at least not like the guys I was riding with. They were going 50, 60 miles an hour down dirt roads. On this thing, I only felt comfortable going about 40, so I was way at the back of the pack. I wasn't jumping over any ravines or pushing trees over with mine. That's probably why it's 22 years old and still looks like it's in really good shape, and it still runs like it's in really good shape. Now, that's not to say I haven't had to do anything to it. Let me talk through some of the stuff I've had to get done or do to it while I've owned it. As you can see, one of the things I have not had to do to it is replace the tires. These front and back tires are the original tires, the original Dunlops that came on this four-wheeler when it was new. Now, the fronts are starting to annoy me because they must have enough thorns in them and they can't seal themselves, because pretty much every time I come out to ride, I've got to put air in the tires. I do use the included air gauge because these only take 3.6 pounds of pressure, and the little air gauge that came with the four-wheeler is the easiest way to gauge how much air is in these tires. I did have the Cycle Country control installed here so that I could plow snow. So that actually gives power to this wire, which connects to the snow plow, which has its own little winch on it to lift the plow. The plow then connects to this bar, I guess it's the top part, as a lift point to lift and lower the snow plow. I have had to replace a couple CV boots over time. They crack and get broken, and they could let dirt and moisture inside there. So those have been replaced. These protective shields have never been replaced. I've taken it pretty easy on this machine. There you can see is the tag that it says 2002 model, Honda of South Carolina. I have pushed a couple things or crossed over a couple logs that have bent this in a little bit, but it's not too bad. It's not perfect though. I did have to replace the carburetor. So after a number of years of use, probably due to the gasoline, I did have to take the carburetor out. I don't know if you can see it inside there. I did take that carburetor out and replace it with an OEM carburetor from the Honda shop. And then the other thing that was replaced, still under warranty when this thing was brand new, was the display. So you can see it says 964 miles on there and 289 hours. And while this thing doesn't have that many miles or hours on it, it does have more than that, because it was about a year old when that broke and had to get replaced under warranty. I think at the time we had probably 200 miles on the machine. So it says 900 miles. It's probably somewhere more like 11 or 1200 total miles on this 22-year-old Honda Foreman. Got the drain plug put back in underneath. The next thing we're going to do is take the oil filter out, which is underneath this case. If I remember right, and I did, it is 8 millimeters. I do have my new filter here. It's Wix 24944. This actually came in a kit with my Amsoil oil that I'm going to use. I've only ever used Amsoil in this Honda four-wheeler. A couple times it was changed at the dealership. They did use the Honda oil, but when I've changed the oil, I've only ever used the Amsoil oil. Just break these 3 loose, and then I should be able to use my nut wrench, nut driver, and this will leak oil, so you want to have your drain pan down underneath, which I do. It does get a little messy though, because as you can see, it's going to hit this plastic and then come down here into the footrest. and you don't want to lose your bolts. There's one. Put it over here by the wrench. People ask me how I keep the plastic so nice. There's a product called SC1. I mean, first of all, I keep the plastic nice by not banging it into trees and stuff, but I also use that SC1. Protects it, makes it clean off pretty easily. Now, I'm going to pull this new filter out of the box so that I can pay attention. Oh, and there's a new O-ring gasket also. So I can pay attention to exactly how the one that's in there comes out and then duplicate how it goes back in. Yeah, it's messy. So here's the old filter. I see that the rubber gasket part goes against the cap. So we'll put the new one, oh, it does say this side, and spring towards engine. We'll see if our new one is the same. Gasket. Our O-ring appears to be in really good shape, but we'll go ahead and pull it off and put the new one on, since it was included with the filter. Perfect. So our new Wix filter does not say this side towards spring, but we know that this rubber gasket side goes inside the lid. Also want to make sure that our rubber gasket seats properly. You do have to push it up against there. Get one of our bolts started here. I'll put an Amazon affiliate link to that SC1 product and maybe some of these tools. But as far as the oil and filter kit from Amsoil, I got that from Clovis Lubricants. So I'll put that link also in here. Clovis Lubricants is an Amsoil dealer. I get all my Amsoil products from Mark over there. What I like to do to make sure these are all evened out, I use my nut driver and hand tighten them to all about the same level. Now, if you're reading the manual, it's going to tell you to torque these to a certain torque. I recommend you follow the manual's procedure. Now our old oil from the oil filter is puddling in the footrest there. So I'm going to use this rag, try to get it to soak up. Another thing that I have replaced on this Honda Foreman maybe twice or three times is the battery. The battery is housed right here, so you take this bracket from the seat off, and I have had to replace a solenoid or something in here. I don't remember exactly. Right here's the fuse box, by the way, if you ever were looking for the fuses. That's where the fuses are. I've never had to replace a fuse, but I had to replace something in here because the mice ate through a wire in storage one winter. This is where the air filter is. If you ever need to replace the air filter, it's there. 4 clips. But like I said, I think this is probably my third or fourth battery in this machine over 22 years. Here's the information. This is a yellow machine, and yellow, a couple things to note about a yellow four-wheeler that I've learned over 22 years. So a couple notes about a yellow four-wheeler. Yes, they do attract bees. If you're riding through a field and there are bees in that field, all types of bees and bugs do get attracted to yellow, but you can't lose it in the woods. That's one nice thing about it. The other thing is, the yellow plastic does stain. This four-wheeler has also been used to haul its fair share of deer, white-tailed deer from hunting seasons out of the woods. Usually we drape it across the back rack here, and this staining on the back is actually blood stain from those deer. The blood just does not come off of that plastic if you let it dry on there for a period of time. You know, you're usually getting a deer in the winter time, probably not the most opportune time to get a hose and wash this thing off. So some of that blood has stained the yellow plastic. Like I mentioned, I've only ever used Amsoil. The dealership did use the Honda oil and filters in it a number of times, but anytime I do the oil change, I use Amsoil. Part of the reason why is, and I mentioned this in other videos, sometimes I don't change oil as often as I should. I think this oil that's been in here was probably in for 2 years. I know you should change it every single year, so we'll try to do a better job of that. But the fact of the matter is, I was actually counting in my head on my drive home the other night. I think there are 19 pieces of equipment that I change oil in here. So between, you know, the generator, the tractors, the four-wheeler, the vehicles, and that's only counting each vehicle one time. We've got the pressure washer, 2 log splitters, boat, jet ski, sport nautique boat. There's a lot of equipment that we maintain, and the ability to use the best quality oil in any of them means that I trust the engine to be performing properly with a high quality oil. So we're going to use the Amsoil. It goes right here is the dipstick. It takes 2.5 quarts. And I'm going to use this they call it a flow tool. The nice thing about this is it can be used on several different size bottles. So I take this little adapter off, and it's the perfect size for these 1-quart Amsoil bottles. You can find these on that Clovis Lubricants website link. So here's the dipstick. We want to fill it to the range it's indicated there, in between these 2 little lines. Going to set it up on the rack for now. Get one of these ready. So we just take the lid off, put the spout on, and how this works is this top part twists. Open, close. That's what lets the oil out. We're going to pop the top off here, bend it back so it's out of our way. You can put this right down in here, tip the jug up, twist, and we've got oil flow. We're not spilling any, we're not losing any. We're just going to let that drain in. This is the Amsoil ATV UTV 100% synthetic motor oil 10W30. I put in 2002 Honda Foreman 450, and there's automatically a kit that comes up from Amsoil that includes the 3 quarts of oil and the proper oil filter, that Wix filter for this machine. Here you can see the progress on the side of the bottle as we drain it. It's like an IV drip, giving it a quart of the good stuff. If you tip it, it goes a little bit faster because you're getting airflow into the bottle and oil flow out. So this is probably the best angle to get it to drain a little bit faster. Quart number 2. Start the drip. So the ATV I had when I was a teenager was actually an ATC. It was a Honda 3-wheeler. It was a 185. And I'll tell you, one of the nice things about a 4-wheeler compared to a 3-wheeler, in addition to the stability, is at least with the Honda Foreman here, the full footrest. With the ATCs, you always just had a peg, like a motorcycle, which is fine, but when you're riding through the woods with all the sticks and stuff sticking up at you, it's nice to have this full foot enclosure here to protect your feet a little bit. Another thing I really like about this 4-wheeler is the headlight system, because you have headlight on a swivel with the steering, so whenever you turn, you're shining light in the area you're going to, which is nice. But you also have the 2 stationary lights down below that are always pointed forward. So it's really nice, that 3 headlight system, perfect especially for plowing snow around a turn here in the wintertime, but also for trail rides at night. There is a high beam and a low beam on it. This is the Foreman ES. A lot of people ask how I like that electronic shift. It's a push button shift up here on the console. You do stop throttling to make the shift, just as if you were pushing a shift pedal on a standard, but it shifts smoothly. I've used this, like I said, for decades now, plowing snow, and I'm very careful to come to a stop before I go between first and reverse. You do have to pull in the brake, push down the reverse button to get reverse to engage, so that helps also. But I'm careful about the transmission, that I make good shift points, and that helps keep the transmission in good shape. There is an emergency shifter if for some reason that wouldn't work at some point, and I've never had to do this, but there is a shifter in the toolbox that connects down here right underneath where we're filling the oil onto this peg, and you can manually shift this if you had to. 1/2 a quart more and we will be done. I do love the temperature this time of year. I like it a little bit chilly at nighttime, but I don't like how quickly it gets dark. I've mentioned that in plenty of videos. Probably sick of hearing me say it this time of year. So some of the things that this four-wheeler is not good at, if you're looking for a high-speed racing jumping four-wheeler, Honda Foreman is not the right machine for you. If you're looking for a machine that goes through crazy amounts of swamps and mud, like up to the seat, this machine is not for you. What this machine is good for, in my experience, has been super reliable use for plowing the driveway, towing a trailer, hauling some firewood. You know, we used this back when we had horses to take bales of hay down into the pasture. I actually used this to tow a whole hay wagon of hay. I wouldn't recommend that, but in four-wheel drive, this thing pulled that hay wagon full of hay right up the driveway and loose gravel, so did a great job there. The other tractor, in case you were wondering, was being used to bale the hay, so it was easy to use the four-wheeler to haul the hay wagon full of hay. Got to keep paying attention here to make sure I don't go past the halfway point. So the things like that, like this is called the Honda Foreman. I think it's a great home and ranch type four-wheeler. If you have animals you're taking care of, going out to the fields to check on things, I think this is a perfect type of four-wheeler for that. And I have had no complaints for 22 years about this machine. Like I said, I leave this with easy access. Now this has only been outside probably a dozen times its entire life. Maybe outside when we were camping up in the field overnight a couple times, outside when we were hunting, but typically this has always been stored inside in the garage or the big building or the shed ever since I've had it. So that's part of another way to take good care of things. You know, plastic doesn't hold up great in constant exposure to the sunshine, so keeping it stored inside probably has also helped prolong the life of the plastic. The seat isn't torn or ripped anywhere, again probably from not having that exposure to the sun all the time. All right, so we are almost at the halfway point here. I think we're going to put the dipstick in and give it a check. The nice thing about this hose is you can just twist, shut off the flow, let the rest of that drain down in there, pull it out, push the cap on it. Here's our half bottle. Should be ready for the next time. We may need to put a little bit more in. We're not quite down to half. Now I'm going to put the dipstick in, see where we're at here. But also remember, we have not start and run the engine yet since we put the new filter in. So it'll need to fill up to the filter level. This might be a good time to do that. It looks like we're full, but let's start it up and run it. Then we'll let it sit a couple minutes and drain back down. If you're new to one of these machines and you're wondering how do you start it, we'll go through that process real quick here. You want to make sure your emergency kill switch, which is this red slider, is in the middle. I've had a mistake where I blamed Mackenzie for messing up the four-wheeler one time because it wouldn't start, kept turning it over. Here, she had used the kill switch, which I never do, so I never thought to look for it, and that's why it wouldn't start. Turn the key on. If it's cold, pull the choke up. Ours isn't cold, so we should be okay there. Want to be in neutral, which is the green indication light right there, neutral. This button right here is the starter button. over here's your throttle, just a thumb throttle. You'll notice I do have the parking brake engaged while I'm standing here starting it. Like I said, this is a light switch, turns the headlights on. One here, two up in front of the machine. High beam and low beam is this top switch. These are your shift buttons, up through the gears, back down through. And your four-wheel drive engage button is over here on the right handlebar, just above the throttle. When you click it in four-wheel drive, the four-wheel drive light lights up. This is your indicator light if you were having a low oil or a over temp situation. I believe that comes on. Then this is your reverse light. So if we were to push down the reverse button, hit the camera stand, but there's the reverse light. Put it back in neutral, put the parking brake back on. Do have a fuel gauge here, which is really nice. Another thing I really like about this machine, you always know how much gas is in it. I do use ethanol-free gas only in my carbureted equipment. Okay, so we need to let that oil drain back down through, and then we'll check it again on the dipstick to make sure we don't need to add a little bit more to make up for the oil that is now pumped through that filter area. Just a note about the Amsoil, this again was the ATV UTV specially formulated oil for these machines. The reason it's different than just a regular oil, it says protects in cold starts and high RPM, which, you know, a lot of ATVs, they start cold because you left them out in the wintertime, or you're starting them in the middle of wintertime to plow the driveway, but then you may have some higher RPMs in that same run session because you're plowing snow and it's heavy and you're pushing hard. So perfectly formulated oil for the application of UTVs and ATVs. This is wet clutch compatible, so if you've got a wet clutch in your system, this is the right oil for that. And then, of course, this is designed for hauling, plowing, and conquering rough terrain. So people always ask, would you buy it again to anything that a person buys? So after 22 years, if someone asked me, would I buy it again? Yes, absolutely. It was a lot of money for me back then. I didn't have a ton of money, and spending almost $6,500 on the machine like this probably wasn't the wisest decision at the time. But I'm so glad I bought it back then. I have not wanted a new four-wheeler any of the time that I've owned this. I see lots of people getting new four-wheelers, but for me, this does everything I needed to do, and I've never wanted a new four-wheeler because to me, this one's already perfect for me. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative and entertaining, please give us a big thumbs up. Leave those comments down below. If you have a Honda Foreman or a Honda Ranger or a Honda Recon about this same generation, I think these are great machines, and definitely for the price back then, it felt like a lot of money, but compared to the price of an ATV today, I think we got a real bargain back then, especially if you kept it working in good condition like this. To buy this machine today, even on the used market, these are running in this type of condition with this low hours. These are running for $5,000 to $6,000. So almost exactly what I paid for it 22 years ago when it was basically brand new. Yes, there's some more beat up ones you can find for $2,000 to $3,000, but I'm so glad I've taken care of this one, and it was at the time, maybe a frivolous purchase, but looking at it over the last 22 years of ownership, my total cost of ownership per year has been pretty small for all the work this thing has done. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll see you again the next time. Go for a little test ride here.